The wedding hall was glowing with lights. White flowers hung from every corner, and soft music filled the air. Families and friends were sitting in their places, waiting for the ceremony to begin. Everyone was smiling, everyone was excited except for one man. The groom's father sat near the front row, his eyes fixed on the young bride. Something about her did not feel right. She looked beautiful in her white dress, but her face showed a strange nervousness. Her hands shook when she adjusted her veil, and every few minutes, her phone vibrated quietly in her purse. She would quickly look down, check the screen, and then hide it again. The father leaned back in his chair, thinking. Weddings were supposed to be joyful, but his chest was heavy. He had noticed the same uneasiness in his son earlier that morning. The boy, the groom, was smiling, but his smile seemed forced. He had dark circles under his eyes, as if he had not slept the whole night. The father's heart told him something was wrong, but he could not yet say what. The ceremony began. The bride walked down the aisle slowly, her eyes not meeting anyone. Guests whispered about how stunning she looked, but the father was not listening. His sharp eyes caught every small detail, the way she pressed her lips tightly, the way she kept glancing toward the door as if waiting for someone. When she finally reached the altar and stood beside his son, the father noticed something that froze him. As the bride lifted her hand to take the groom's, her sleeve slipped slightly, and for a second, he saw it. A mark on her arm. It looked like a scar, dark and ugly, hidden under makeup but not fully covered. The father frowned. It was not just the scar, it was the way she quickly pulled her sleeve back as if afraid someone might see it. He knew scars told stories. Some stories were painful. Some were dangerous. The vows began. The priest spoke gently, asking the couple to repeat the sacred words. The groom's voice trembled, but he followed. The bride's voice was weaker, almost breaking. Her eyes were shiny, as though tears were waiting to fall. The father's heart pounded. Why was she so nervous? Why was his son silent about it? He looked around. No one else seemed to notice. Everyone was happy, lost in the beauty of the moment. Only he felt the growing weight of suspicion. Then, as the bride reached for the groom's ring, her phone buzzed again. This time, the father's sharp ears caught the faint sound. The bride froze for just a second, and her eyes flicked to her purse lying near the altar. He saw the fear in her face before she forced a smile and continued. The father leaned toward his son. His voice was low, almost a whisper, but it carried the power of years of wisdom. Do you even know who you're marrying? The boy turned his head, confused. Dad, what are you talking about? The father didn't answer. His eyes stayed locked on the bride, who now avoided looking at either of them. She smiled at the guests, but her smile was fake. The ceremony moved forward, but the father could not sit still anymore. His instincts screamed at him. He thought of every small thing he had noticed in the last few months. How the bride never spoke much about her family. How she always avoided questions about where she came from. How she changed her story whenever someone asked about her past. And now, here she was, standing in front of everyone, acting as though she was hiding something. The groom shifted uncomfortably, his hands cold and shaky. He wanted to believe in love, but his father's whisper dug deep into his mind. Do you even know who you're marrying? The words echoed louder than the music in the hall. The father's eyes narrowed. He had lived long enough to know when something was wrong. And today, at his own son's wedding, he felt the truth was about to explode. The bride smiled again, but for the father, that smile only deepened the mystery. And in that moment, with the whole hall watching the couple, he made a silent promise to himself. He would not let this wedding end until he discovered the truth. The wedding hall was still bright, but for the father, shadows seemed to fall everywhere. The music, the flowers, the smiling guests, none of it mattered. His mind was filled with questions. Who was this girl? Why did her eyes carry so much fear? And why was his son blind to it? He leaned back, his arms crossed, while the priest continued speaking. Every word about love and trust felt heavier on his heart. The father's instincts had never failed him before. He had built his life, his family, and his honor by trusting what his gut told him. And today, his gut was screaming, something is wrong with this bride. His thoughts drifted back to the first time he met her. She had been polite, smiling, almost too perfect. But even then, something had felt unusual. Whenever he asked about her family, she gave short answers. Sometimes she said her parents lived far away. Other times she said they had passed away. Each time, the story changed slightly. The father remembered the way her eyes shifted whenever she spoke about her past, as though she was rehearsing a lie. He had brought up his worries to his son once before, but the boy had brushed them off. "Dad, you're overthinking. She's just shy. She doesn't like talking about her past." The father had let it go then, not wanting to hurt his son. But today, watching her standing at the altar, nervous and pale, those memories returned like fire. The father's gaze moved to his son. The boy's hands trembled as he held the bride's. He was trying to look strong, but the father could see the cracks. He wondered, does my son also feel something is wrong? Or is he too deep in love to admit it? The father could not sit still anymore. Quietly, he leaned toward a cousin sitting nearby. His voice was soft, but his tone was firm. "Check her name online. Now. Quickly." The cousin's eyes widened. "What? Uncle, this is a wedding." "Do it," the father ordered. His voice carried weight that allowed no argument. The cousin nodded and pulled out his phone under the table. His fingers moved fast, typing the bride's name into search engines, public records, anything that might give an answer. While he waited, the father kept his eyes on the bride. He noticed how she smiled at the priest but did not look at the groom. He noticed how her body leaned slightly away from his son, as if she was not truly there with him. And every few minutes, her gaze darted again to the door. Who was she waiting for? Minutes passed, though to the father they felt like hours. Finally, the cousin returned, his face pale, his eyes wide in shock. He leaned close to the father and whispered, "This can't be true." The father's heart tightened. "What did you find?" The cousin hesitated, his hands shaking. "Her name, it doesn't exist. At least not the way she gave it. No real records. No school history. No official documents that match her age or address. It's like she appeared out of nowhere." The father closed his eyes for a second. This was worse than he had expected. A person without a past was not someone you could trust. And now she was standing, dressed in white, about to tie her life to his son's. He opened his eyes and looked at the bride again. She was repeating the vows with a trembling voice, pretending nothing was wrong. But to the father, every word she spoke sounded hollow. The father's mind raced. Should he stop the ceremony right now? Should he pull his son away in front of everyone? His heart burned with fear, but his mind told him to wait. He needed more proof. He needed to hear the truth from her own lips. He glanced at the cousin again. "Say nothing to anyone." "Not yet." The cousin nodded, though he looked terrified. The father's hands gripped the armrest of his chair. His knuckles turned white. He could almost feel the weight of danger pressing down on the room. He thought of all the families gathered here, all the smiling faces who believed they were celebrating love. None of them knew the storm that was forming in front of them. Then the bride's phone buzzed again. This time, the sound was louder. She froze for a split second, her eyes flicking to her purse. The groom noticed, his face tightening, but he said nothing. He wanted to believe in her. He wanted to believe in love. The father whispered under his breath, his voice low but filled with steel. "No. Not today. You will not fool my son." The guests clapped as the priest announced the nearing of the final vows. Smiles and laughter filled the hall, but the father did not smile. His suspicion had now turned into certainty. And as he stared at the bride's shaking hands, he made a silent vow of his own. Before this wedding ended, he would force the truth into the light. The hall was filled with smiles, but the father's face was stone. He sat still, yet inside, his heart was restless. His cousin's whispered words kept echoing in his mind, "Her name does not exist." The father's eyes stayed locked on the bride. She stood there, pretending to be calm, but he noticed every crack in her mask. Her breathing was shallow. Her hands trembled as she touched the wedding ring. And worst of all, her eyes refused to meet his son's. The priest raised his voice, announcing that it was time for the final vows. The crowd leaned forward, ready for the moment of union. But the father could not allow it. Not without answers. Not without the truth. Slowly, he rose from his chair. The sound of it made people glance toward him. He ignored their stares. His steps were firm as he walked toward the altar. The groom looked up in confusion. "Dad? What are you doing?" The father's deep voice carried across the hall. "I need to ask her something. Right here. Right now." The bride froze. Her face turned pale under the heavy lights. She forced a smile, trying to keep her calm. "Is something wrong, sir?" The father's eyes pierced through her. "Tell us who you really are." A wave of whispers spread across the guests. The priest looked uncomfortable, glancing between them. The groom's heart raced. He stared at his bride, searching her face for an answer. The bride laughed nervously. "What do you mean? I'm me. You know me." But her words lacked power. Her smile shook. The father took a step closer. "Do not play games. I had your name checked. It doesn't exist. No records. No past. Who are you really?" The hall fell silent. Every guest stopped breathing for a moment. All eyes turned to the bride. Her lips opened, but no sound came out. She looked at the groom with desperation, her eyes begging him to believe her. But the father's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "If you cannot answer me, then you cannot marry my son." Gasps filled the hall. The groom's hands went cold. "Dad, please." But deep inside, even the groom felt something breaking. He had ignored the small signs before. The late-night calls she never explained. The lies about her family. The way she avoided sharing her past. Now, everything was catching up, and it was tearing his heart apart. The bride finally spoke, her voice shaking. I don't have to explain myself. This is my wedding day. Why are you ruining it?" The father's eyes narrowed. "Because truth matters more than a dress, more than flowers, more than promises built on lies." The bride took a step back, her hands gripping her bouquet so tightly the flowers began to crush. She turned her face away, refusing to look anyone in the eye. Then, suddenly, she moved. She dropped the bouquet, turned, and tried to walk quickly down the aisle toward the exit. Gasps and shouts followed. Guests rose from their seats, confused and shocked. But before she could reach the door, the father moved faster. His strong frame blocked her path. His voice boomed through the hall. "No one leaves until the truth comes out." The bride stopped in her tracks. Her shoulders shook. Slowly, she turned, tears glistening in her eyes. The weight of the moment crushed her. She could not run. She could not hide. The groom stepped forward, his face pale. "Please, just tell me. Who are you? Why are you lying?" For a long moment, silence filled the hall. The bride looked at him, her lips trembling. Her eyes carried a storm of guilt and fear. Finally, she whispered, almost too softly to hear. "My name is not the name you know. The life I told you about, it was never mine." Gasps echoed again. Guests covered their mouths, shocked. The father's voice was steady. "So what is the truth?" The bride shook her head. "If I tell you, everything will be over." The father's eyes hardened. Better to end lies than to live in them. The groom's heart broke with every second. His dream of love, his belief in her, it was slipping away. He wanted to shout, to cry, to demand answers. But all he could do was stand frozen, staring at the woman he thought he knew. The bride's tears spilled. "I never wanted this to happen. I just wanted a new start." The father's voice turned sharp. "A new start built on lies is no start at all. Tell us everything." Her breathing grew fast, her chest rising and falling as panic overtook her. Everyone in the hall watched her, waiting. Then, a voice from the back broke the silence. "She won't tell you." "But I will." All heads turned. A tall man stepped forward, his eyes burning with anger. He pointed straight at the bride. "I know her. And she's not who she says she is." The hall erupted in shock. Guests whispered, confused, terrified. The groom's body went numb. He looked at the stranger, then at his bride, then back again. The bride's face turned white as snow. Her hands shook violently. She whispered one broken word under her breath. "No." The hall was no longer filled with joy. The music had stopped, the whispers had grown louder, and fear replaced excitement. Every eye in the room was fixed on the stranger who had spoken. His voice had sliced through the silence like a knife. The bride stood frozen at the altar, her face pale, her lips trembling. She looked like a cornered bird, desperate to escape but unable to move. The groom's heart thudded in his chest. He wanted to protect her, yet the words of his father and now this stranger crushed his trust. The father stepped forward, his tone steady but cold. "Who are you? And what do you mean you know her?" The stranger walked down the aisle slowly. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried himself with authority. When he reached the front, he pulled something from his pocket and held it up. A badge gleamed under the lights. Gasps rippled through the crowd. He spoke firmly, his eyes never leaving the bride. "My name is Officer Daniels. And this woman is not who she pretends to be." The bride's knees buckled, and she almost fell, but she gripped the altar to keep herself standing. Tears began rolling down her cheeks. The groom's voice cracked. What are you talking about?" Officer Daniels took a deep breath. "Her real name is not the one you know. She has been living under a false identity for years. She is wanted in another state for fraud, theft, and possibly more." The hall erupted with shocked cries. Guests covered their mouths. Mothers pulled their children close. No one had expected a wedding to turn into something so dark. The father's face hardened, but his voice remained calm. "Is this true?" The bride shook her head violently. "No. Please, you don't understand." Her voice cracked as she sobbed. "I didn't want this life. I wanted to leave everything behind." The groom staggered back, his chest tight. His dreams of a happy life with her were crumbling in seconds. "Tell me he's lying, please." The bride's sobs grew heavier. She covered her face with her hands, ashamed, broken. For a long moment, she said nothing. And then, she whispered, "I can't deny it anymore." The hall went dead silent. Officer Daniels stepped closer. "You thought you could hide forever. But your past always catches up." The bride's legs gave out, and she fell to her knees. She cried uncontrollably, her veil slipping off, her hair falling around her face. "I never wanted to hurt him. I never wanted to hurt anyone." The groom dropped beside her, desperate to understand. "Then why? Why lie to me? Why lie to all of us?" She looked up at him, her face streaked with tears. "Because if I told you the truth, you would have walked away. And I loved you too much to lose you." Her words cut deep. The groom felt torn apart, love and betrayal crashing inside him like waves. The father placed a hand on his son's shoulder, steadying him. Love without truth is poison. She had a choice. She chose lies. The bride shook her head. "You don't know what I went through, you don't know what they made me do." Officer Daniels' eyes narrowed. "Then tell us. Tell everyone here what really happened." The bride's chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. Her tears did not stop. Finally, she nodded weakly. I'll tell you, but please, don't hate me until you hear everything. The hall fell silent again. Even the children stopped fidgeting. Everyone leaned forward, desperate to know the story hidden behind the bride's mask. Her voice trembled as she began. I was not always like this. I was a simple girl once. I had a family, a normal life. But then, everything fell apart. My parents died when I was young, and I was left alone. I made mistakes. I trusted the wrong people. And those people dragged me into things I couldn't escape. She wiped her tears but kept speaking. They taught me to lie. They taught me to steal. At first, I hated it. But when you're hungry, when you have no one, you do what they tell you. And slowly, I became what they wanted. A criminal. A ghost with no real name. The guests whispered among themselves, some pitying, some angry. The bride's voice cracked again. One day, I couldn't take it anymore. I ran away. I left it all behind. I wanted a new life, a clean start. That's when I met him. She looked at the groom, her eyes filled with sorrow. You were my hope. My light. You made me believe I could be someone better. The groom's eyes filled with tears, but he shook his head. Then why didn't you tell me? I would have stood by you. I would have helped you. Her sobs grew louder. Because I was afraid. Afraid that if you knew the truth, you'd leave me like everyone else did. The father's voice broke through, sharp and firm. The truth always comes out. And it always comes at the worst time when it is hidden. The bride lowered her head, defeated. I know, and now I've lost everything. For a moment, silence filled the hall again. The guests sat in shock, some with tears, some with judgment. Then, Officer Daniels spoke, his voice grim. This isn't just about mistakes. She is wanted. And the law cannot ignore that. The bride gasped, panic flooding her face. She looked at the groom one last time, her voice breaking. Please, don't let them take me. The groom's heart shattered, torn between love and betrayal. His hands trembled as he reached out toward her. But before he could touch her, the sharp sound of sirens echoed from outside the hall. The guests gasped, turning toward the doors. Police were arriving. The sharp cry of sirens pierced the air, and the hall filled with gasps and whispers. Guests rushed to the windows, some clutching their children, others covering their mouths in shock. Blue and red lights flashed outside, bouncing against the glass doors. The bride froze in place. Her hands shook violently, and her eyes widened like a trapped animal staring at hunters. She whispered through trembling lips, No, not now. Please, not today. The groom's heart sank deeper. Every sound, every siren outside, felt like the sound of his world shattering. He looked at his bride, torn between anger and love. His voice broke. Is it true? Are they here for you? Tears rolled down her face. She tried to reach for him, but the father stepped between them, his protective hand firm against his son's chest. His voice was sharp and cold. Answer him. Don't hide anymore. Is this why you wanted to marry in a hurry? Is this why you avoided your past? The bride sobbed. Yes. But you don't understand, I was trying to escape that life. I wanted to start new, with him. The groom shook his head, his body trembling. You should have trusted me. You should have told me the truth. Officer Daniels stepped forward, his voice heavy with authority. It's too late for that. She is wanted for multiple crimes. Fraud, identity theft, and possibly more. We have been tracking her for months. She has been hiding under false names, moving from city to city. The bride cried louder. No. It wasn't like that. I was forced into it. I never wanted to hurt anyone. Please believe me. The father's voice cut through her cries. Whether forced or not, lies destroy everything. You tried to build a life on lies, and now it is falling apart. The groom's chest heaved as he stared at her. I loved you. I believed in you. But now, I don't even know who you are. Her eyes pleaded with him, filled with desperation. I'm still me. The woman who laughed with you, who dreamed with you, who loved you with everything she had that was real. Please, please don't let them take me away. The room was filled with tension so heavy it felt like the air had thickened. Guests sat frozen, unable to move, watching the tragedy unfold in front of them. Officer Daniels lifted his radio. They're here. It's time. The bride gasped, panic consuming her. She dropped to her knees, grabbing the groom's hands. Her tears fell onto his skin as she cried, "Please. Say something. Stop them. You're the only one who can save me." The groom looked at her, his face a storm of emotions. His heart screamed to protect her, but his mind reminded him of every lie, every secret, every danger. He pulled his hands away slowly. His voice cracked like glass. "I can't save someone who never trusted me with the truth." Her sobs filled the hall, breaking hearts around her. Some guests turned their faces away, unable to watch. Others whispered prayers. The father placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "You did the right thing. Sometimes love must end to save a life." But the groom's tears betrayed him. He did not feel right. He felt broken. The heavy doors of the hall swung open, and uniformed officers entered. The flashing lights followed them, casting long shadows on the floor. Gasps echoed again as the guests moved aside, clearing a path. The bride screamed. "No! Please!" She tried to run, but two officers caught her arms. She struggled, her cries echoing through the hall. "I'm not a monster. I just wanted to be free. I just wanted love." The groom covered his face with his hands, unable to watch. His shoulders shook with silent tears. The father stood tall, his face firm but his eyes heavy with sorrow. He had saved his son, but he also knew he had broken him. Officer Daniels gave a nod to the other officers. "Take her." The bride's cries grew louder as they dragged her toward the doors. She twisted, looking back one last time at the groom. Her voice cracked with pain. "I love you. Please remember that. I loved you." The groom looked up, his tears falling freely. His lips moved, but no words came. He could only watch as the woman he thought would be his wife was taken away in handcuffs. The hall was silent except for the fading echoes of sirens outside. Guests sat frozen in disbelief. A wedding had turned into a nightmare no one would ever forget. The father wrapped an arm around his son, holding him tightly. "It's over now. You're safe." But the groom shook his head, whispering through his tears. "Safe? I don't feel safe. I feel empty." The father closed his eyes. He knew wounds like these did not heal quickly. They stayed, like scars on the soul. Outside, the police cars drove away, carrying the bride into the night. Her cries faded into the distance, swallowed by the sound of engines and sirens. Inside, the groom collapsed into a chair, his body weak, his mind drowning in pain. The guests quietly began to leave, whispering about the shocking truth they had just witnessed. The father stayed beside his son, silent, strong, but deeply heavy inside. He knew this day would haunt them forever. And as the last of the guests walked out, a chilling thought entered the father's mind. The wedding hall stood in silence long after the police cars disappeared into the night. The flashing red and blue lights had faded, but their memory lingered in every corner of the room. The scent of flowers still hung in the air, but their beauty felt empty now. What was once a celebration had turned into a scene of heartbreak and shame. The groom sat motionless in his chair, staring at the floor. His tuxedo, once neat and shining, now looked wrinkled and heavy on him. His hands rested on his lap, cold and lifeless. He felt as though his entire world had collapsed in the span of an hour. The woman he loved, the woman he wanted to marry, was gone, taken away in handcuffs. The father stood beside him, his face stern yet full of sorrow. He had done what he believed was right. He had saved his son from a lifetime of lies, but the cost of truth was heavy. He looked at his son and wished he could take away the pain, but he knew no words could heal wounds like this. The guests whispered quietly as they left. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others muttered prayers for the groom's broken heart. Chairs scraped softly against the floor, footsteps echoed, and one by one, the room emptied. Soon, only the groom, his father, and a few close family members remained. The groom finally broke the silence. His voice was soft, cracked, and filled with despair. "Dad, was it all fake? Everything she ever said? Everything she ever did with me?" The father sat beside him, resting a strong hand on his shoulder. "No, son. I believe some of it was real. Her love for you may have been real. But the lies poisoned everything." Tears welled in the groom's eyes. "I thought she was my future. I thought she was my forever." The father's voice grew heavy. "Sometimes the people we love most are the ones who hurt us deepest. You didn't fail, son. She did. She chose lies over truth." The groom buried his face in his hands. His chest heaved with sobs he could no longer hold back. His father wrapped his arms around him, pulling him close, holding him like he had when he was a child. For a long moment, they stayed like that, father and son, surrounded by silence, holding on to each other while the night grew colder. Outside the hall, the faint echo of sirens still lingered in the distance. The bride was gone, but her shadow remained. Her tears, her cries, her confession, they were carved into everyone's memory. The guests would talk about this night for years to come. A wedding that turned into a police arrest. A love story that ended with heartbreak. The groom lifted his head slowly. His face was wet with tears, his eyes red. "Dad, do you think she really loved me? Or was I just another lie?" The father looked into his son's eyes. "I think she loved you. But love without truth is not love at all. It's a cage. And if you had married her today, you would have been trapped in that cage forever." The groom swallowed hard, his chest aching. He wanted to hate her, but his heart still clung to the memories. The laughter, the promises, the moments they shared. It was impossible to erase them. Yet every memory now felt tainted by betrayal. The father stood and looked around the hall one last time. The flowers, the decorations, the untouched cake, all of it felt like a cruel reminder. He spoke quietly, more to himself than to anyone else. This was never a wedding. It was a warning. The groom slowly rose to his feet, his legs heavy as if carrying the weight of the world. He walked to the altar where only hours ago he had stood with her, ready to promise forever. He touched the bouquet she had dropped, the petals crushed, broken, lifeless. His fingers trembled as he picked it up. For a moment, he stared at it, then let it fall again to the floor. His father joined him, his voice steady. "This is not the end of your story. It's just a painful chapter. But you will heal. You will rise again." The groom nodded weakly, though his heart still ached. "It doesn't feel like it now." "It never does," the father replied softly. "But time will show you that truth saved you, even if it hurt today." Together, they walked out of the hall. The night air was cool, the streets empty. The world outside continued as if nothing had happened, but for them, everything had changed. As they reached the car, the groom turned back for one last look at the hall. He whispered to himself, his voice almost carried away by the wind, this was the wedding that never happened. His father placed a hand on his back. And thank God it never did. They drove away into the night, leaving behind the shattered remains of what was once meant to be a celebration of love. The hall stood quiet, filled only with silence and shadows. And somewhere in the distance, inside a speeding police car, the bride sat in handcuffs, her face wet with tears, her heart broken with regret. She had lost everything, her freedom, her dreams, and the only man who had ever truly loved her. The truth had caught her at last. And though the wedding never happened, the memory of that night would haunt them all forever.